Record 20. Side 1. Lesson number 20. The 20th lesson. Practical section. Meeting at the club.
Hello, Black. Haven't seen you for some time. How are you?
Well, it's nice seeing you again. We've been in the country at my mother's for a short holiday. My wife hasn't been so well lately.
Sorry to hear that. How's she now? Better, I hope.
Oh yes, it was flu. And after all the snow and cold winds we have had, she was feeling rather low. How's your wife?
Keeping well, thanks. Though she can't wait for summer to come either. I'm afraid we aren't as lucky as you, having your mother in the country.
Soon be able to get back into the garden again, eh?
Yes, but the weather isn't really right for it yet. Won't you have a drink?
Thanks. I will. A whiskey, if you don't mind.
Good. Waiter, bring 2 whiskies, please.
Anything new in the evening paper tonight, old man?
Don't know. I seldom read an evening paper nowadays. I'm usually too busy, and then I find the TV relaxing in the evening.
Look, I'm going home now. Why don't you come and have a chat by the fireside? My wife will be delighted to see you.
That's good of you. I will. Thanks. My wife's visiting some sick friends, so she probably won't be home till after 10. Here are drinks.
Good health.
Cheers. Have you the car outside?
No, I walked along to get some exercise and pass an hour here at the club before supper.
Let's walk then. It's not far to your house from here.
Spring is in the air. Our old friends the swallows will soon be coming back. You know, I love to see the birds returning in spring. The swallows, larks, thrushes, blackbirds, cuckoos and goldfinches, all returning to rejoin our old friends and sometimes pests, the sparrows and starlings.
Anything that indicates the return of spring is wonderful. The grass becomes just a little greener, and the trees begin to bud, and slowly the leaves open, and the green is everywhere.
We seem to be getting poetic all of a sudden, don't we?
Yes, that's another sign of spring, they say. It's as if the country wanted to show us a good example of the way of living.
I've planted some trees in my garden, but I'd like to add some others.
What have you planted so far?
A few small pines, 1 or 2 beeches, an oak or 2, and that's all. But I'd like to plant a privet along the front garden wall.
What about flower beds with rose bushes, boxwood, or something of that kind? These give a garden the classical touch, don't you think?
I already have a rose bed in the front garden, but I have so much ground behind the house that I want to create a shady corner with trees along the bottom. Well, here we are.
Your garden looks fine. There are fresh green shoots everywhere.
Mary, I've brought someone for supper.
Lovely. Oh, it's you, Mr. Redstone. So nice to see you again. Isn't your wife with you?
You're too kind, Mrs. Black. No, she's out visiting some sick friends. So I strolled along to the club and met your husband.
We had a drink, and I asked him along. Got anything nice to offer, Mary?
Some cold ham, and there's the cold roast, some cheese, and there are a few bottles of beer. What do you say to a few sandwiches and a glass of beer?
That sounds fine. What do you say, Redstone?
Don't trouble yourself for me, Mrs. Black.
No trouble at all. You two go out into the garden for a few minutes. John has plants and plants there, which I'm sure he has told you about.
The garden will certainly be very beautiful when he has planted all those trees.
Of course, it'll be a few years before they are tall enough to give us shade from the sun and shelter from the wind. Let's go and look.
Side 2, Grammatical Section. Anomalous Verbs. Second part. In Lesson 12, some rules regarding the uses of anomalous verbs were given and illustrated. Now we shall give you further uses and constructions that require those verbs. Can and could. These are the present and past tenses and are the same for all persons. Can is, however, often used as a future tense, but only when it expresses permission and the idea is clear. My father says I can go to the cinema tomorrow evening. The past and conditional tenses of can are expressed by could. There are no other forms of can, so all the other tenses expressing the idea of ability or capacity are formed by the verb to be able. I am able, etc., and I can, etc., are exactly the same when the meaning is capacity. But can and could are, where possible, preferred to the periphrastic forms with to be able. In some cases, the student wonders why to be able is not always used. but English-speaking people usually, where possible, prefer the defective verb. The student must therefore know its uses and be able to interpret them, even though, but this would be wrong, he try to dispense with its use altogether in his own conversation and writing. Can and could, then, indicate capacity and permission. You can go home now. Can I ask John to come this afternoon, Mummy? Could I have the afternoon off today, sir? Could is often used as a more polite form of asking permission. He can run 100 yards in 10 seconds. Children can play from morning till night without stopping to rest. I could run 100 yards when I was young. I was able to swim to the bank when our boat capsized. Were you able to understand what he said? Note the last three examples very carefully. I could run expresses a past capacity only, so could is quite correct in the affirmative. However, in the examples I was able to and were you able to, the defective could would be wrong. In these examples we show or ask about an action being done, not simply the ability to do it. Could only indicates, in the past tense when affirmative, the ability or capacity to do something, but does not express the doing of the action itself. This rule is no longer applied when could is negative or used with verbs of perception. They couldn't, or weren't able to, visit their friends because the weather was so bad. Couldn't they finish this job before they went home? Could is used with to have plus past participle to express past ability to do an action which was not done. For example, we could have gone to the mountains last summer. If I had not been ill, I could have passed my examination. Your friends could have done it much quicker. Future ability, that is, not existing now, can only be expressed by shall be able for the first person and will be able for the second and third persons. John can drive, and I too shall be able to drive when I have passed my driving test. If you study this course conscientiously, you will be able to speak and write English well. Do you think they will be able to sell their house in the country? All other tenses are formed by the verb to be able, without any alternative form of can or could. Can and could are usually used with verbs of perception, since the latter have no progressive tenses normally. We cannot say, "Are you seeing that man at the end of the street?" But we usually say, "Can you see that man at the end of the street?" The negative of can is cannot, all one word, and the contracted forms are can't and couldn't. When the verb means knowledge of how to do something, we use the verb to know how to. We may not have the ability to carry out the action, although we know the procedure.